What is up, you guys? Michael Costas here, reacting to top 15's shocking live TV moments. And there's that. You guys are gonna hear the audio, and that's it. You'll see my face.
This video contains content which may disturb some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Number 15, Manila Bus Hostage Crisis. On August 23, 2010, former police officer Ronaldo Mendoza hijacked a tourist bus in Manila, Philippines, taking 25 people hostage, 20 of whom were tourists from Hong Kong, stating he was unfairly fired and demanded a fair hearing on the matter in order to properly defend himself. Police surrounded the bus and negotiators made contact with Mendoza, and news stations covered the entire 10-hour standoff. At around 7:20 p.m., negotiations broke down after Mendoza witnessed his brother's arrest broadcast live on television, and Mendoza fired warning shots in the air, then demanded his brother to be released from custody. The bus driver managed to escape during this and mistakenly told police the other hostages were dead. SWAT immediately stormed the bus, beginning a 90-minute gun battle as they attempted to enter the bus, but with little success. In the end, Mendoza and 8 hostages were dead, with a further 9 suffering injuries. Viewers at home witnessed the
He told them they're accidentally dead, so they filled innocents with holes. That's not cool. That's
battle
fucked.
worldwide as news stations continued to focus their cameras at the carnage. Both Philippine and Hong Kong authorities held a joint investigation to determine the reason why Mendoza targeted the bus, but so far nothing has been determined. The police raid caused controversy in the Philippines and abroad due to botched efforts to end the situation quickly and effectively, resulting in an overhaul of the police force and dismissals of high-ranking officials. Number 14, the death of Dale Earnhardt. Dale Earnhardt was a well-known NASCAR driver and had partaken in
Well known, and I never heard of him.
776 races during his 27-year career. On February 18, 2001, Earnhardt was a contender in the Daytona 500 race, along with his son Dale Jr. The race had gone relatively smoothly until the final lap when Earnhardt accidentally clipped the car of Ken Schrader, sending Earnhardt's car head-nose first into the wall, causing significant damage to the car. Both cars rolled into the infield section just as the race was wrapping up. Schrader, having suffered only minor injuries, exited his car and rushed to check on Earnhardt. Dale Jr. immediately rushed to his father's car after finishing the race and found his father in critical condition from blunt force trauma. Earnhardt was rushed to a nearby hospital, but doctors were unable to revive him and he was pronounced dead at 5:16 p.m. Eastern Time. Number 13, the murders of Allison Parker and Adam Ward. Sometimes even the smallest of news stories can spark unseen dangers. In the early morning of August 26, 2015, Rokan, Virginia, reporter Allison Parker and photojournalist Adam Ward were conducting an interview with Vicki Gardner, an executive director of the Chamber of Commerce, concerning the 50th anniversary celebration of Smith Mountain Lake. During the interview, the three were interrupted by several popping noises, and the camera captured both Parker and Gardner jump, scream, and attempt to run, before the camera fell to the ground and captured a man's legs slowly walking towards them as the popping sounds continued. The station cut back to the stunned anchors, who had no idea what just happened, but promised to update viewers once they were given more information. Parker, Ward, and Gardner had just been shot by a former co-worker, Vester Lee Flanagan II, who had been fired from WDBJ in February 2013.
So this guy, literally a nigga, he's black. No racist, I'm not trying to. This guy literally shot 2 news anchors because he was fired off his news. That's fine.
For volatile behavior. Tragically, Parker and Ward died at the scene, while Gardner survived with a bullet wound to her back. Later that day, a video surfaced on Facebook detailing what appeared to be a point-eyed view of Flanagan shooting the 3 victims, and he wrote on his Facebook page his motives were due to harassment from Parker and Ward, as well as other staff, due to Flanagan's homosexuality. Police eventually caught up to Flanagan, and after a short chase, he committed suicide. Number 12,
you got a vacuum in there?
Bradford City.
Huh? Huh?
I got to get the spider web.
Oh.
Stadium fire. On May 11, 1985, fans gathered to Bradford Stadium in West Yorkshire, UK, to watch a game between Bradford City FC and Lincoln City FC. The game went as normal for the first 40 minutes, with neither team having scored yet. The game took an unexpected turn after sports commentator John Helm noticed the entire block cheese section of the stadium was being evacuated by police. He noted
that shit caught fire. What the fuck? Bruh. That sucks. Let's read some comments right now. Can't stand the voice but not a bad video. That's crazy.
The viewers, he could see a small fire underneath one of the rows, and it began to grow larger and larger. The game was immediately stopped after fans jumped onto the pitch to escape the blaze. The fire spread rapidly, largely due to the amount of garbage and papers on the ground, combined with spilled dried alcohol. Within 2 minutes, the entire side of the stadium was on fire, and panicked people fled to the pitch, while others cheered and chanted, not realizing how catastrophic the situation was. The heat was so intense, people suffered burns from several meters away. 56 people died in the fire, and a further 265 were injured, mostly from burns. Number 11, JetBlue Flight 292 emergency landing. Airline accidents are terrifying to think about, but thankfully not all end in tragedy. On September 21st, 2005, JetBlue Flight 292 was set to fly from Burbank, California to New York City. Immediately after takeoff, flight crew discovered they were unable to retract the landing gear, which could potentially cause complications during flight. The pilots flew towards Long Beach Airport and had the tower assess the situation from below. After several attempts with no success, the pilots decided to make an emergency landing and set a course for Los Angeles Airport, and passengers on board the plane watched the situation from the flight's televisions. The plane finally came in for a descent at 6:30 p.m., just over 3 hours after takeoff. As the plane touched down, the faulty landing gear caused sparks to fly as the jet made its way down the runway. Fortunately, the plane came to a full stop and an evacuation quickly began soon after. On an even more positive note, the landing was smooth and there were no minor or major injuries. The cause of the malfunction was a result of an O-ring failure preventing the landing gear to retract or steer.
Everything fucked up.
Regardless, all 146 persons on board lived without injury. Number 10, the LA riots. On March 3, 1991, video captured police allegedly assaulting Rodney King during a traffic stop. After a lengthy trial, all officers involved were acquitted from any wrongdoing on April 29, 1992, sparking outrage amongst the Los Angeles community. Many believed the verdict was racially motivated, and the officers were let off because they were Caucasian, while King was an African American. The day the verdict was read, unrest sparked in several communities around Los Angeles, with the corner of 71st and Normandy considered to be ground zero for the riots. The riots lasted 5 days, with looting, arson, and shootings widespread as people took out their anger over the racial tension, and many more took advantage of the unrest to resort to mob mentality. News stations across the world descended on LA, and what was filmed was absolute carnage. 3,600 fires blazed during the riots, destroying 1,100 buildings. Various people around the country expressed support for the rioters, while others condemned the actions. Surprisingly, one of those condemning the riots was King, who during a tearful interview coined the term, "Can't we all just get along?" The riots finally ended after the California National Guard and troops from the 7th Infantry Division and the 1st Marine Division were called in and took back control of the city. A total of $1 billion in damages was done. 55 people were killed and 11,000 were arrested. Number 9, the assassination of Lee Harvey Oswald. On November 21st, 1963, Lee Harvey Oswald, a former Marine, shot and killed U.S. President John F. Kennedy and later police officer J.D. Tippit before fleeing the area. He was soon captured by Dallas police in a movie theater and initially was only charged in Tippit's murder. However, an investigation later led authorities to name Oswald as a suspect in Kennedy's assassination. 3 days after the killings, Oswald was being led to an armored car to take him to be booked at the county jail. As soon as he and his escort approached the car, nightclub owner Jack Ruby ran out from the crowd and fired a revolver into Oswald's abdomen, and Oswald was rushed to nearby Parkland Hospital. Ironically, the same hospital doctors attempted to save Kennedy's life days earlier. Oswald did not regain consciousness, and he died 2 hours after being shot. Ruby gave no motive for killing Oswald, stating only he helped Dallas to redeem itself. Number 8. Christine Chubbuck suicide. The world of journalism is undoubtedly a stressful one, with deadlines to meet, sources to contact, and stories to cover. Sadly, regular viewers are not always aware of the stress and fatigue that goes on in the industry, but horrified viewers and station personnel witness the bad side effects this day. Christine Chubbuck was a news anchor from Hudson, Ohio. Chubbuck suffered from depression much of her life, and the stress of her job had begun to take its toll on her, and had been seeing a psychiatrist regularly for several weeks due to suicidal thoughts and tendencies. She had stated her depression was largely due to her being unable to lead a steady personal life because of professional obligations. After working on a story about depression and suicide, Chubbuck came to work on the morning of July 15, 1974, and covered 3 stories on the air before the film reel meant to show footage of one of the stories jammed. At this moment, she said to the station staff and viewers at home, in keeping with Channel 40's policy of bringing you the latest in blood and guts and in living color, you're gonna see another first attempt at suicide. At this moment, she pulled a gun from her handbag and shot herself in the head. All while live on television, panicked staff rushed to her
That sucks. I don't think she did that. It's crazy.
aid as producers quickly cut to the standby screen. All footage of her suicide was destroyed on the request of her family, and no known copies of her death are believed to exist. Number 7. The end of Waco siege. The Branch Davidians were a religious movement based out of Waco, Texas from 1955 until 1993, and caught the eye of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives after they received a tip the Davidians were stockpiling weapons on their compound on Mount Carmel, Texas. On February 29, 1993, agents from the ATF descended on the compound to execute a search warrant. Reports vary of the event, but a shootout began and 4 ATF agents and 6 Davidians were killed in the ensuing gunfight. The FBI took over the operation, and what resulted was a 51-day siege, as Koresh and several of the Davidians barricaded themselves in the compound. On April 19th, smoke began bellowing out of the buildings, and the entire compound became engulfed in flames. 76 Davidians, many of whom were children, died of asphyxiation. The official report states that Davidians deliberately
Rest in peace, those kids.
set fire to the compound in a suicidal pact, with visual and audio evidence to support this. Number 6. The 1991 Sacramento hostage crisis. On April 4th, 1991, shoppers were browsing through the Florin Mall in southern Sacramento, California, when armed men attempted to rob a store nearby. When the robbery failed, the men fled and took refuge in a Good Guys electronics store, taking the occupants hostage. The gunmen were members of a gang known as Oriental Boys, a Vietnamese gang based in and around Sacramento. The police responded almost immediately, with a SWAT team ready to go as they were preparing to execute a search warrant before the call came in. Negotiators spoke with the assailants for several hours, and local news and bystanders looked on. The talks went over smoothly until late in the evening, when one of the perpetrators, known as Number 1, began arguing with negotiators and making bizarre demands. Negotiators determined they would not be able to resolve the crisis peacefully, and SWAT geared up and prepared for entry into the back of the store. Negotiators arranged for the gunman to receive a second bulletproof vest, and the gunman had a woman bound to a rope exit the building to retrieve the vest. While this happened, police sniper Jeffrey Boys was given a green light to fire, and he shot at Number 1, who was standing by the door, but the bullet was deflected by the glass and missed. Stunned, Number 1 ran back into the store, moaning and covering his face with his hands. Boys gave the go order, and SWAT stormed the back of the building. After the raid, 3 of the 4 gunmen were killed. and 3 hostages were killed during the siege, with a further 14 wounded. Number 5, the Balloon Boy. Richard Heen and Mayumi Iizuka are a married couple who both pursued careers in acting, but with little success. As a hobby, Heen was working on a cylinder helium balloon in hopes of creating an alternate means of transportation for personal use. However, things appeared to take a shocking turn when, during a test, the balloon took off in the air, allegedly containing their 6-year-old son, Falcon. The family noticed he was missing, and Falcon's brother claimed to have seen him climb into the basket of the craft right before.
That kid did not care about his life. He has to never just jump out and walk out and die.
Before it took off, he contacted authorities, and what resulted was a chase through the Fort Collins area that lasted 2 to 3 hours. News stations picked up on the story, and agencies such as Fox and CNN
stayed in the balloon when they didn't go in it.
Emergency personnel as the events continued to unfold. Eventually, witnesses and viewers noticed part of the craft looked deflated, and it began to descend. As it neared the ground, a man rushed towards it and grabbed a rope hanging down in order to prevent it from flying off again. First responders immediately rushed to the craft to check on Falcon, but were shocked to discover Falcon was not inside. Theories went wild, even people believing Falcon could have fell out at some point during flight. It was later discovered Falcon was safe and had actually been hiding in the attic of his home the entire time. Suspicion was immediately aroused, and during a later interview, Falcon was asked why he didn't come out, said he did it for the show. Heen and Iizuka later admitted the entire thing was a hoax and a publicity stunt, and both later pled guilty to charges of wasting police resources. Number 4, the Munich hostage crisis. The Olympic Games are meant to be a peaceful competition between the many countries of the world. Sadly, this isn't always the case, and one event changed the way the Games are held forever. Midway through the Olympics in Munich, West Germany, on the night of September 5th, members of the Israeli team and their coaches were in their dorms when members of the Palestinian group Black September stormed in and took most of them hostage, while 2 escaped and 1 was killed. The hostage takers demanded the release of 234 Palestinian prisoners in Israel, and members of the Red Army faction in Germany. Negotiations with German authorities lasted most of the day, with news cameras filming the tense scene as the hostage takers spoke with police from the balcony windows. Eventually, negotiators falsely agreed to transport the members of Black September and the hostages to Egypt, and vans transported the group to an airport, where helicopters awaited to take them to a plane at another airport nearby. However, the plan was a setup. German police snipers opened fire, but a Black September member threw a grenade in one helicopter, while another shot up the second one. In the end, all the hostages, members of the Black September, and 1 West German police officer were killed. The Olympics continued, and at the closing ceremony, the remaining Israeli team, who managed to escape early on, wore black armbands as a sign of mourning. Number 3, Patrick Ireland's escape from Columbine. On April 20th, 1999, students at Columbine High School in Jefferson County.
First off, this happened on the camera 420. Okay, that's what I'm gonna say. This happened on 420 because they're stoned. I'm just kidding. I've heard this before.
Colorado were entering their final week before exams. Just after 11:15 a.m., students Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold began shooting students outside before entering the school, where they continued to fire. Within a half hour, Harris and Klebold murdered 12 students and 1 teacher before committing suicide in the library, next to where most of their victims lay. Police had surrounded the school within the initial minutes of the shooting and remained outside for several hours as SWAT teams swept every classroom searching for the gunmen, not knowing they were already dead. One of the victims was 17-year-old Patrick Ireland, who was shot in the head but survived. Ireland managed to stay conscious and crawled to the window of the library. Below, 2 SWAT officers.
He got shot in the head. He lived. He didn't sit there and cry. He crawled and jumped out the window, and he got saved. No one should do that though. He was just
Standing
waiting.
guard on an armored vehicle spotted Ireland above them and reached up to pull him out and bring him to safety. Ireland was immediately rushed to the hospital and was brought into stable condition after a 4-hour operation. The image and footage of Ireland being pulled to safety has become the most iconic footage of the massacre and was made even more positive knowing Ireland survived. Ireland is now married and works as a field director for Northwest Mutual Financial Network in Denver, Colorado. Number 2. Police pursued suicide. On September 28, 2012, police were in pursuit of an SUV in and around Phoenix, Arizona. Fox News anchor Shepard Smith was narrating the events as they transpired live from a news helicopter. The chase began to wind down as the suspect drove into a field and exited the vehicle. The chopper zoomed in on the scene as Smith declared the situation made him feel nervous and was unsure if he was going to give up, take off on foot, or engage in a shootout with the police.
Okay, be right back, y'all.
Oh shit. If I got any dirty discs anywhere, car spots and shit. Right, Carmen, go look at your fucking wrong place.
None in ours.
Damn it, this is. No, wait,
The suspect took off and stumbled a bit, with Smith describing his movement as erratic. Suddenly, the suspect stopped, appeared to tremble, and then without warning brought a gun to his head and fired. Station managers and Smith himself ordered the footage to be cut, but it was too late and the suicide aired live in front of thousands of people. The station then immediately cut to commercial, and upon returning, Smith explained how there is a 5-second delay within the studio in order for them to cut away should something graphic happen. However, he admitted they failed that day, promising it would never happen again under his watch. Number 1. United Flight 175. Unfortunately, it is hard to compose a list of this content without once again discussing the events of 9/11. After American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in New York City, all eyes were focused on the Twin Towers as the events unfolded. News stations fixed their cameras from all angles as they attempted to understand what was happening. While initially believed to be an accident, the day took a gut-wrenching turn after people spotted United Flight 175 flying into Manhattan. People looked up in disbelief, and live to the world, news showed 175 crash into the South Tower, showering fire and debris onto the streets below. This was the moment it became clear that these events were deliberate actions. Even news anchors could not contain their shock, as viewers could hear station personnel gasping and even cursing as they witnessed the horrific acts unfold. Later, American Airlines 77 crashed into the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, and United 93 crashed into a field in Pennsylvania after passengers attempted to
Well, yo, that's gonna be it. Rest in peace to all those who died in this, good or bad. Peace, and I'll see y'all next time.